Our next story is about diamonds. They could be the latest casualty of geopolitics. There's a trade war brewing. The target is Russian diamonds, and the impact will be felt by India's diamond polishing industry. It's the biggest in the world, India's industry. India polishes about 90% of the world's diamonds. Your Tiffany's, Chopard and Signet diamonds, they mostly come from the city of Surat in Gujarat. Diamond polishing is the lifeblood of Surat. The Ukraine war is already hurting it.
Because of the Russia-Ukraine war, 30,000 to 50,000 workers in Surat have lost their jobs. We can only pray to God that the war will end. If the war does not end, we don't know how bad things will get in the days ahead.
That was from last year. First, there was undersupply. Now there's a supply glut. So much so that India has asked Russia to pause, to halt the supply of diamonds. But there's no stability in the diamond market, and things may get a lot worse next year. That's because a new plan has been put in motion. The G7, along with Belgium, are working on this plan. They want to curtail Russia's multi-billion-dollar diamond industry. They're planning to close a loophole, one that has left Russia's diamond industry relatively unscathed.
Approximately 40% of the rough diamonds have been imported from Russia, and that is through Alrosa mines. Okay, they are the miners from Russia, and that is a big quantity and the big amount also involved in it.
Russia's Alrosa is the biggest diamond exporting group in the world. 1/3 of the company is state-owned, meaning the government of Russia directly benefits from diamond sales. And how much has it benefited? Last year, Moscow made about $4.5 billion from diamond exports. That may not sound like very much, but during a war, every little bit counts. And no one will say no to $4.5 billion US dollars. So Russian diamond sales have helped fuel the war in Ukraine. They allow Moscow to keep building its war chest. And this is common knowledge. Russia has faced 11 rounds of European sanctions. You know what's been missing? EU sanctions on Russian diamonds, they have not come. The US and the UK have sanctioned the Russian stones, but the EU avoided it so far. Do you know why? Personal interest. You see, most of the world's diamond trade goes through Antwerp in Belgium. And Belgium, of course, did not want this trade to stop. After all, diamonds are a big business. The US is the world's biggest buyer of diamonds, but the EU is not too far behind. So Belgium wanted to keep buying from Russia. Of the $4.5 billion that Russia made last year, $1.5 billion was from the European Union. And this was money from diamond sales. So for all of Europe's lectures, it was funding Russia's war through diamonds too. The EU did consider sanctions, but Belgium vetoed it. And for the EU to impose sanctions, all 27 member countries must agree, hence no action against the Russian stones. But now that has changed. Belgium is finally on board. It has even come up with a way to identify Russian diamonds. The West wants to use two methods to track them: blockchain technology and physical checks. Countries will be able to track the origin of every stone they import, so they can effectively impose sanctions on Russian diamonds.
You've had regulation which basically says that if the origin is Russia, so that sounds good, then it's banned basically. But actually what happens is the origin classification gets changed. So if the rough diamond makes its way, for example, to India, and then India manufactures and polishes the rough to a polished diamond, then the origin is changed to India, and then it's sold.
This is what they call the Indian loophole. When a diamond is polished in India, its country of origin becomes India. And from here, it goes to fancy jewelry showrooms across the world. But finally, the EU is banning Russian diamonds and closing this diamond-shaped loophole. Not because it grew a conscience, but because business has fallen. Russian imports to Belgium have fallen by about 45%. This was in the first 3 months of this year compared to last year. So Belgium came on board because it's not making that much money anymore. But for these sanctions to be effective, the diamonds need to be tracked. And for that, India needs to be on board, which is why next week the G7 is sending officials to India. They'll try and convince New Delhi and Surat to help track Russian diamonds. Without India's help, the entire plan falls flat. The question is, will India agree? Surat is home to about 2 million diamond polishers. Times have not been great since the pandemic. Is it fair to ask them to sacrifice more now, especially since the EU agreed only after it saw it had nothing to lose?